Hello everyone, welcome to Train Me Buddy. This is Siddharth. In the previous videos, we had gone through the SQL queries, starting from creating the database and table, different variation of select statement, where clause using different operators, insert, update and delete statement, join and union statement. In today's video, I'll show you where to use aggregate functions and group by statement. So let's get started with the detail. So what will you learn today? We will go through different aggregate functions such as count, sum, average, mean, and max. Then we'll go through how to group data using group by statement. Then using aggregate functions along with the group by statement. Then you will learn how to filter aggregate values from the group data using having clause. So what is aggregate function? Aggregate functions are used to perform calculation on a set of rows from one or more tables and return single value. For example, if you want to get the total count of employees from employee table, then you can use the aggregate function count to perform the same. Mostly, we use aggregate functions along with group by statement to get single or aggregated values based on different grouping. For example, if you want to get highest marks scored by a student in a class, then you can use the max aggregate function. So today we'll go through different aggregate functions such as count, which has been used to get the total number of items in a dataset. Then we'll go through the aggregate function sum, which has been used to get the sum of all or distinct values in a column from a dataset. For example, if you want to get the sum of the marks scored by a student, then you can go with the sum function. Then we'll go through the average function, which returns the average value in a dataset. For example, if you want to get average marks secured by the students in a class, then you can go with the average function. Then mean function is used to return the minimum or lowest value in a dataset. For example, if you want to get the lowest marks scored in a subject or class, then you can go with the mean function. Similarly, max function is used to return highest value in a dataset. So if you want to get highest marks scored in a subject or class, then you can go with the max function. So let's start with the SQL queries for aggregate function. So first of all, let's go through the count function. So before we get into the query, let's pick up a database. So we'll be using training DB2 for this video, and you'll get the script for creating the training DB2 in the link provided in the description below. So let me pick up a table first and check the data. So I'll be using the student table. So for that, let me select data from student table. So let's have select star from student and execute. And you can see that there are 7 records from the student table with the columns roll number, name, class, and mark. So we'll go through different variation of count function. So we'll have the count star, then count of specified column, then count of distinct specified column. So let's start with count star. So for that, let's have select count star from, then I need to give the table name. So let's execute this query, and this is giving the count 7 because we have total 7 number of records in the student table. So as you see here, it is showing the no column name for the count. So you can provide a alias name. Let's say I want to give the alias name as CNT, or let's say I want to have it as student underscore count and execute. Then this will be getting us the count as 7 along with the column alias as student count. So let's change the query a little bit. So let's say I want to get the count of marks in the student table. So let's change the query of count star to count of marks. So I'll be putting count of column mark. So let me execute. So here we are getting the student count as 6 because we are using the count of mark, and this will return the total number of items or total number of records in the student table for the not null values in the mark column. So if we go back to this query and select the data from student, you see here that we have one row which is having the mark as null. So in total, we have the 6 rows with the not null value. So that's the reason the count of marks or count of specified columns will be getting us the result with the total number of not null values. So let's change this query a little bit. So let's have count of distinct mark. Okay, so let me execute this query. And you can see that we have the count as 5 because the count of distinct mark or count of distinct specified column, which is mark over here, will be getting us the count of distinct values in the column we have passed inside the count function. So if we go back to the select query again, then you can see that we have 60 repeated twice. So if we are going with the distinct mark, it is getting us the 5 count. Now let's go through the sum function, which returns the sum or total of all or distinct values in a data set. So I'll be using the same student table. So we have, let's execute, and we have the 7 records in the student table. So we'll be going through different variations of sum function, that is sum of specified column and sum of distinct specified column. So we'll be using the student table for the sum. So let's have the sum of marks in the student table. So let's have select, let me have the from first, from student, then sum of mark, and let me execute this query. So this is getting us 360, which is the sum of the not null values based on the column mark. You can also put the alias here, like as, let's say, total mark, and execute. And this will be giving us the alias for the sum of marks or total mark from the student table. So let me modify this query to have the distinct column name. So let's have sum of distinct mark, and let's execute this query. And this is getting us the result as 300, because if you see here in the student table, the mark 60 is repeated twice. So what the sum of distinct mark will do is it will exclude the duplicate values. So if you have so many duplicates, let's say we have repeated 40 or repeated 80, then it will be only taking the single value. So in this case, it is only taking the single value out of 260. Okay, so as a result, we are getting 300 as the total mark, or 300 as the sum of distinct mark column in the student table. So now let's go through the average function. So similar to the sum, we'll also go with the average of specified column and average of distinct specified column. So for this, I'll be using the same student table. So let's say I want to get the average mark from the student table. Then let's have the query as select AVG to get the average of mark. So I'll be going with average mark or AVG mark from student. So let's execute this query. And here we have 60 being the average. So if we go back to the student table, you see here that average mark for the entire student table is 60. So if you have distinct here, so we'll be having average of distinct marks. Let me execute this. And this is getting us 60 being the average between the distinct marks in the student table. Then let's go with the mean function, which returns the minimum or lowest value in a data set. So let's have the minimum marks of the students in the student tables. So for that, similar to the other aggregate functions, we can have select, then the aggregate function mean, and we need to pass the value as a mark column from student. And let me execute this query. And here we are getting the 40 being the minimum mark. So we can have the alias as mean mark, let's say, and let me execute. So it is getting the alias now with the mean mark. So if we go back to the student table, just to verify the data, 40 is the lowest number out of the mark column. So similarly, we can use the max function to get the maximum value in a result set or data set. So for this, we need to have the max function passed with the column. So let's have the maximum mark in the student table. So for that, I'll be having select max of mark from student. So, and let me execute. And it is getting the 80 because 80 being the maximum value in the mark column in the student table. So let's verify again. So here we have the 80 is the highest mark in the student table. So what is the use of group by statement? We use group by statement to group rows with same or distinct values into summary rows. For example, if you want to get number of employees in each department, then you can use group by clause on the column department name in an employee table to perform the same. Group by statement is mostly used to group the result set by one or more columns. Please note that group by clause is used along with select statement. Group by clause is placed after the where clause, and group by clause is placed before the order by clause. Let's get started with the SQL query. Now let's go through the group by statement. So we'll be going through different variation of group by statement. So we'll be using group by along with single or multiple columns. Then we'll go through the group by with aggregate function and using the join statement. So for this, I'll be using the same table student. So let's say I want to group the data using the column class, then I can have the group by statement as select. Let me have the from first student. So I'll be having class group by class, and let me execute. And you can see here that it is getting the group by the distinct value of the column class. So we can also have multiple columns along with the group by, which we'll see in the later part of this video. Let's say I want to have the count of students for each class, then we can use the aggregate function along with the group by to get the count of students for each classes. So let's change the query little bit. So we'll be having select class, then count. Let me have star and execute. And you can see that it is getting us the count of students for each class. So we can have an alias here. So let's have as student count and execute. So here we are having the class 10 having 3 students, class 8 is having 2 and 9 as 2 respectively. So if we go back to the student table, and here we can see that for class 10 we have 3 records, and for 9th and 8th we are having 2 records each. So let's say I want to have the sum of marks for each class, then I can change this count to sum, and let's have mark, and let me execute. And this will be giving us the sum of marks for the each class of the student table. Similarly, we can change it to AVG or average, and we can get the average mark for each class. So let's say I want to get the maximum mark in each class, then I can go with the max mark. So let me execute. And it is getting us the maximum mark by each class. So if we verify again by going to the student table, then for 10th, as you see here, the maximum is 80. Similarly, if we are going with the mean function, then this will be getting 40 mark for the class 10th and 60 for class 9th. And it will be getting 50 for class 8th because this record is having null value. So always the aggregate function takes the not null value. So let's see this with the query. So I'll be having mean here instead of max. And let me change this name as mark and execute. And here you can see that we are having the minimum mark for each class. So we can also use the order by in the group by. So I'll be having order by, let's say we are going to order the data by class. So it will be ordering the data by the class column. So let me execute, and you can see that it is ordering the data by the alphabetical order. Now let's go through the group by with the join statement. So for this, I'll be picking up the table employee. So let's say I want to get the count of employee by each department. So let's have select star from employee, and let me have the alias as E. Let me have inner join department as D on E dot department ID equal to D dot department ID. And let me execute this query. And this will be getting all the columns from both the tables. Then let me have the group by. So let me start with the selected columns. So let's have D dot department name, which will be getting from the department table, then count, and I'll be using the same department column as part of the group. So I'll be having group by department name, and let me order it, order by department name, and let me execute this query. So here you can see that it is getting the employee count by each department. So we have different departments like executive, finance, human resources, marketing, and purchasing. So these departments are having these many employees. So we can always go with the alias name. So let's say I want to have the employee count as the alias for this. And let me execute this query. Okay. So here we are getting the count of employees based on the department. So let's say I want to also get another column along with the group by. So let's say I want to get the group by the store name and department. Then for that, I need to use another join statement because store information is available in the store table. So for that, let me have another join. So join will be before the group by. So let's have inner join store. So let me have the alias as S on E dot store ID, which is employee dot store ID equal to S dot store ID. And here let me have the store name first. So let's have S dot store name, comma D dot department name. So let me copy this. So you can have the group by columns in any order, but just to keep the standard, I am going with the same sequence as the select statement. So let me execute this query. And here we see that it is been grouped by the store name and department name. And we are getting the count based on each store and department. Let me sort it also with the store name. So let me have store name, comma, department name, and let me execute this query. And here we are getting the store name along with the department, and we are getting the count. So we have the data for two stores. So for each store, it is grouping the data for each department, and we are getting the employee count for this. Now let's go through the having clause. So let's say we need to get the employee records grouped by store name and department having employee count greater than 2. So how to achieve that? So for this, I'll be taking the same query we just written for grouping the store name and department name. So let me have this query and execute. So here we are getting different store and respective department for that, and we are getting the employee count. So here I need to get the grouped records where the employee count is greater than 2. So let me have a where clause here, where employee count greater than 2. And let's execute this query. So here we are getting the invalid column name error because we cannot use the where clause to filter the grouped data. So for this, we need to have the having clause. So let me delete this line of where clause, and we need to have having clause after the group by. So let me have having, then I need to take the count star greater than 2, and let's execute this query. So as you see here, we are getting the grouped records where the employee count is greater than 2. Another example of having clause, which is mostly used in real time, is to check the duplicate in a table. So let me take a table to check the duplicate. So let's have the employee table. So let's check the data from employee table. So let me select the data from employee table first. So select star from employee, and let me execute. And let's say I want to check the duplicate data in employee table by the columns first name, last name, and email. So let me have the query as first name, last name, and email. And let me take this for group by. So group by first name, last name, and email. And let me have the count here. So count star. So we are using the count star to check the count by all the columns. So if you want to check the count by one column or first column or second column, you can give the sequence number. So let's say I want to get the count by the employee ID. So I can have the count 1 here, and let's check the duplicate. So for that, let me have having count 1 greater than 1 and execute. So there is no duplicate record in the employee table. So let's have another example for checking duplicate. Let me take another table called dance student to check the duplicate using having clause. So let me execute this query to see the data in dance student, and here we have the data with roll number and name. So let me change this as a group by statement. So let's have roll number, then name, and let me have the group by roll number and name, and let me have the count here to check the count greater than 2 to check the duplicate, and here I'll be having the having clause after the group by. So having count star greater than 2, and let me execute. So here it is not showing any record because we may have the count which is equal to 2. So I need to change it a little bit. So either I can have a greater than equal to 2. So we are getting the duplicate records over here, or you can have the greater than 1 to check the duplicates. So here we are having 4 student records which are having duplicates. I hope this tutorial is useful for you. I have kept all the queries used in this tutorial in the link provided in the description. So if you like this tutorial, please keep watching and subscribe the channel Train Me Buddy and hit on the bell icon so that you will be notified about the upcoming and new videos. Also, if you have any doubts or suggestions, please feel free to put it on the comment below. Thank you.